Right, it's time to go over those Has healer builds, or more commonly known as hybrid healers, buff builds. You could argue support builds, but technically, due to the mechanics of this game, literally everything is a support build. In the gameplay footage, I am going to be running a DPS build, which you could also argue as a support build. I'm supporting my teammates by doing more damage than them, kind of thing. And the reason I'm running a DPS build and not some form of Has healer or hybrid healer is because running these types of builds outside of predetermined groups, like clan that you're able to talk to, etc., is generally kind of a bad idea, simply just because there's normally a specific mechanic involved that allows you to utilize your hybrid healer or Has healer in that certain manner. So they're not really good with randoms, and trying to get an organized group together on a Sunday for me to do this video is kind of difficult. So we're just gonna roll with the punches. I will be showing some of my hybrid healers as well as giving other suggestions. But first, history lesson. Why am I referring to them as Has healers? Well, the simple reason really is it's one of the first builds that came about in this playstyle was a speedrun build for Iron Horse Boss 3, and that build was something that looked something along the lines of this. Now, this is a diagnostics build that has 100% Has Pro by using 3-piece Eclipse with hazard protection and everything. To hit skill tier 6, we need to be holding the TDI card custom. Otherwise, you then have 2 blues. It's not the tankiest going around. You're able to self-overcharge by throwing a grenade using Acosta's go bag. You are able to provide support and buff your team by having a bulwark shield, which will also help keep you alive, as well as utilizing Vanguard, and you will then use the Restorer Hive to act as a healer. This build is typically utilized in more experienced teams where they won't actually have a dedicated healer for their boss 3. Iron Horse, they will run this build who does diagnostics as well as heals the team. And that is pretty much where the Has healer term comes from. It's a Has Pro healer. Ta-da! This then filtered down into the people like me and you, the more casual player base, and we started to run with it, come up with weird and wacky, crazy, different ideas to help push the game in a different direction potentially, as well as kind of push players past the curve of realizing that you don't have to play just DPS or just blue build or just healer. You can kind of mix and match. Typically, I would argue, don't try and mix and match with DPS builds, because when you want DPS, you really need all of the DPS. But mixing up things like a healer with a bit of DPS, a tank with a bit of healing, or a healer with a bit of tankiness is perfectly fine. But typically, if you want someone going full DPS, I would argue, don't fuck with it. Leave it. So I'm going to show some of the Has healers that I use. The first one is this. Most of these I've already done a video on in the past. So here we have 4-piece ongoing narrative, the Vile Mask, China-like glass cannon chest. This isn't completely maxed out yet. I've still got to upgrade my mods as well as get some slightly better or optimize my rolls. But everything's basically rolled to status effect. I have 2 skill repair mods and 1 incoming repair mod. I am at skill tier 2, which gives me some decent-ish heals, but it also allows me to essentially just perma-buff my entire team by use of the Jammer Pulse, Vile Mask, Blue Screen, Sledgehammer with the fire grenades, as well as utilizing Survivalist. Total amp damage is like 84.8%, which is nothing to scoff at. The next one is something I've also shown before. We have a 4-piece Future Initiative. Ferocious Calm for perfect Overwatch with skill damage and skill haste. Again, mods are not looking too tasty. And we're running Memento. We're running a turret to help us with damage. And we're also utilizing the Repair Chem Launcher at skill tier 6. The heals on this aren't too great, but Future Initiative does make up for it. And we're able to buff our team by a total of 37%. 15 from Future Initiative, 12 from Overwatch. This is both skill and weapon damage, which is pretty useful. I like using the new Reliable as a heavy burst damage and to also provide suppress just in case enemies or my allies do need to close in. But other than that, Capacitor is the main weapon. Next up, we have what I like to call the True Patriot Tank Healer. 4-piece True Patriot, all rolled to skill repair or skill haste, 3 protection from elites, which I do need to get better ones, and an Alp Summit chest, rocking emphatic resolve. I'm also utilising the Catharsis mask to help us heal, maintain ourselves as well as our shield, and we're also able to use the chem launcher to heal ourselves as well as the shield. A huge bonus to this is utilising the pistol, the 93R, which does some serious DPS and is capable of doing some wondrous things. I have mine with Sledgehammer just in case I need to help buff other players. We could also potentially add the Necromancer build into this, although I covered that in a previous video. So the next one that I like to use is kind of like a tanky DPS with heals. Although this is a really powerful build using 3-piece Future Initiative, Fox's Prayer, Pristine Example, and Dr. Home being your main source of heal, utilising Ninja Bike Messenger Backpack just to round it all out. The main benefit to this is if you are playing with 3 other people who are running some serious DPS builds. Pretty much all of the healing comes from the Dr. Home talent. We do have a repair chem just in case, but this is more to help you than it is your allies. In order to utilise that build correctly, you really want a team full of some serious DPS players. Now, when it comes to Has healers, honestly, the sky is the limit. However, I would ask, if you are going to make something like this, try and keep it as simple as possible. Simply just because if you end up trying to do too much, the build ends up getting really, really messy. Now, there are some useful talents that you are able to utilise with these type of builds. I think Dispatch was a little bit upset with me because I didn't mention them in my previous top tier healer video. But for me, if you're going to go full healer, some of the other talents, although they're good in the grand scheme of being a full-on healer, they're not too worthwhile. And the only reason I say that is if you're going to be a healer, the idea is to heal. Like, to put it into perspective, really, if you needed heals but then someone procced Vanguard for you, it's like, yeah, great, I've got a massive chunk of superficial, time-limited, temporary armor. It's like, that's not going to help you out. It's going to help you immediately, but 5 seconds from now, you're still going to be in the exact same place of nearly dead. So, for me, if you're going to go full healer, FI is the main way. You can go hardwired, but if you're going to go for a Has healer and mix it up a little bit like a hybrid healer, some talents to keep an eye on or maybe play around with are going to be efficient, especially in tandem with energize. If you're able to get perfectly efficient, this is actually really good. I once ran a mission with someone who was running a full DPS build using survivalists, so the armor repair kit is spread to all allies within a certain radius. I'm forgetting how far it is, but whenever anyone was low on armor, he just started taking armor kits. He was just a normal DPS build with efficient, and yeah, he basically had enough armor kits for literally everyone the entire mission. He was a full DPS build. I think he was running negotiators, but he just had efficient on his chest rather than obliterate or something. His damage wasn't quite all there, but he kept us all alive, and it was actually a welcome sight. Running that with something like Energize, where every time you take an armor kit, you get +1 skill tier. If you're already at skill tier 6, you get overcharge, could potentially be a very worthwhile way to go. Next one would be Galvanize, and considering we've just got perfect Galvanize as well, this is actually going to be really handy from essentially now on with perfect Galvanize. Get someone running like a True Patriot build with Galvanize on. That's basically your entire team doing 8% more amp damage, healing with pretty much every shot, and permanently has bonus armor. It's going to be incredibly powerful in sort of hybrid support setups, and I'm genuinely looking forward to it. Might have to start deleting a few builds to rearrange some of the ones I've already got. Leadership is, for me, a double-edged sword. Most of the time, I barely notice it or even care. It's only 15% of my armor. But when you get it in a setup where someone's running leadership, another person's running vanguard, another person's running galvanize, you can near enough end up like tripling your armor. Ends up being a slow process because I've basically just named a bunch of blue builds or blue build talents that you would typically see on blue builds. But the overall effect is actually quite fun, and if you're able to get it going quite well in tandem with everyone and synergize quite well with the variety of builds that you potentially could have, although it will be a slow process getting through, it is quite funny watching enemies struggle to even just take out your blue armor, let alone getting into your actual armor or even your health. Ends up being quite a funny process. Overclock is one that I kind of feel is slept on, especially if you're playing like a legendary healer. Not so much because of the cooldowns. The cooldowns for me are quite immaterial, but the increase in reload speed, especially if you've got someone running a LMG, can be really beneficial. It also allows some players to take things like fast hands off their build if they are playing that way, and opt for a more damaging talent and utilising being near the hive with a healer, utilising overclock to basically play off as their reload talent. Can work pretty damn well, and it is definitely slept on in my personal opinion. Admittedly, it is very niche as to when it would be most useful. Protected reload. This is a weird one. I actually quite like protected reload. There's just one issue I have with it. In order to get the most use out of it, because there's no cooldown or time duration on it, it's just reload, grant bonus armor to allies, which is pretty damn great. So it would stand to reason that the best weapons to use this on would be the weapons with the smaller magazines. The issue tends to be that the weapons with the smaller magazines tend to take a phenomenal amount of time actually reloading, or are shotguns. Shotguns have an amazing ability to hit absolutely sod and all past maybe 10-15 meters. So yeah, not the best way to go. Although, if you are able to get some good synergy going, you can basically permanently buff your team with protected reload just by continually cycling weapons and reloading at varying different intervals. Protector. Normalize putting Protector on tank builds. Just saying. You can also put this on, basically if you're just running a 6-tier healer build, even just FI, rather than running a hive, run something along the lines of Bulwark Shield and a Chem Launcher. Run Protector as your backpack. You've now got a tanky healer. You've got skill tier 6 shield with a Chem Launcher and Protector. You're now providing heals, a bit of tankiness to draw aggro, and over armor, over shield, whatever you want to call it. It's just handy. Here's a weird one for you. Shock and Awe. Everyone always uses it because it increases skill damage, but no one ever reads the part where it increases your repair skill. So run something like a Stinger Hive, put it on the spawn door, and then a Chem Launcher. Stinger Hive applies the status effect. This is increasing your further stinger damage, as well as, when needed, because the buff lasts for like 20 seconds as well, which is quite a long time, it increases your amount of healing. Put that on an Eclipse build or even an FI build if needed, and you've got a pretty good setup. Going to be niche because you're going to need to know where spawn points are, but it could be worthwhile. You could even put it on just a normal Eclipse build and run like a burn sticky to help perpetuate the length of the status, and then just run Chem for healing. Problem solved. And finally, Tamper Proof. Now, Tamper Proof for me is like the ultimate utility skill. It's CC, damage, it helps your team out immeasurably, and all you've got to do is essentially just have like a skill build with this on a backpack talent, and you're away. Especially if you actually know spawn locations as well. You are literally able to control the entire dynamic of a fight just buy a well-placed turret or a hive or even the remote scanner, because it works with remote scanner as well. And if you have players running flatline, yeah, great, good to go. So essentially there's no real limit to what you're actually able to do with a hybrid healer or has healer. It really is entirely up to you, but like I said earlier, try and keep it as simple as possible. If you start running too many things, and in order to get the maximum out of it, you've got to throw so much out there, and in random groups you're most likely not going to have the opportunity to do this. You might have a certain build of where someone needs to run a certain thing, so that you're able to optimize and capitalize on that as well. Overall, has healers are a great dynamic to the game, and they can absolutely change the balance of the play that you are in, the mission, or the group, depending on what the group themselves are and what they are doing. They're not typically something I would suggest for new players. They are more of a thing of, I'm bored, what can I, crazy, weird, wacky thing can I actually even come up with? So, just to help you out, I've got a few examples here. So, up first, 4-piece Future Initiative. We're going to use the Hermano backpack for the Perfect Overclock Tardigrade chest. We're only going with these because 2 blue cores, adding in tardigrade so it can help keep people alive if needed. 4-piece Future Initiative, 1 for the buff of 15% total weapon damage and total skill damage, as well as operating as a healer. In order to hit skill tier 6, we do need to be holding the TDI card custom, or if you're really lucky, you can go with whatever you want, but just re-roll the Hermano backpack, which hopefully will come with repair skill and skill haste to a skill tier. Then we have this monstrosity, K.I.S.S. This will help keep you alive. We're running Murakami backpack with repair skill, skill haste and energize. Everyday carrier, which is the named Bellstone piece with repair skill, skill haste, rolled to skill tier. And obviously Murakami knees. This gives us 2% armor regen. Adding in K.I.S.S, you are surprisingly able to stay alive. From here we have Motherly Love if you are running in tandem with a shield. If you're not running a shield, just go with a normal Alps gloves, just because the 10% skill health. And from there they would utilise the Chem Launcher. We are able to hit overcharge and self-overcharge if we're holding the card TDI custom and then take an armor repair kit. But I kind of don't really see the point in this build, despite the fact that I have seen some people use it. Simply just due to the fact that you're able to get better, more consistent healing just by using a normal FI build. But it's up to you. Then we have the build that I was talking about earlier with someone that joined my group who was running this. So we have Everyday Carrier rolled completely red, 4-piece Negotiators, Coyote's Mask. He was running Survivalist as well, which I've not put in for the specialization, and this actually worked ridiculously well. I'm actually kind of surprised by it. I'm actually kind of gobsmacked. I imagine getting the Everyday Carrier with those rolls is going to be a little bit of a nightmare. I'm pretty sure it is a DZ exclusive, but yeah, take it as you want. And the last one I'm going to show, just so I can stop talking, is your standard red FI build. I would actually suggest that people kind of normalize this and farm it. There's many different ways you could run it. It's just you need 4-piece FI, including the chest, to roll red. I run mine with a Cheska backpack with Vigilance and Coyote's Mask. It gives me 60% crit chance and 122 critical hit damage, not including the Coyote's buff. I run Future Perfect on my weapon just because we do still have the utilities of 4-piece Future Initiative, and running Future Perfect on the weapon does mean we are able to hit skill tier 3 or 4 if we're running Technician. From here, we're still able to provide a decent amount of damage while buffing our team, still being able to potentially heal if you're running Future Perfect, or you don't even need Future Perfect. Being able to heal just with Future Initiative is perfectly fine, as you do get quite a boost from it, especially with the group buff. And you're still buffing your team with the Future Initiative buff. So yeah, that is going to be my collection of Has healers. I'm sorry it's a bit more convoluted. It's just because, quite simply, Has healers are probably the most common type of hybrid builds, and the general idea of Has healers is support your team in a variety of different ways. Healing, buffing, providing over armor. There's a load of weird and wacky things you're able to actually do with them. The sky is the limit, like I said earlier. The only thing I would suggest, again, is 1, make sure it makes sense, and 2, keep it quite simple. If you start adding in like a bunch of random things that you're potentially able to do with the build, you're potentially also not going to be doing them with your build at all. Keep them simple, try and keep it limited to like 1 or 2 buffs that your build is able to give. And if you want to extend it further, just run a weapon with Sledgehammer and you'll be surprised how much you're actually able to do with just minimal amounts rather than just going crazy with it, and you should be good. Anyway, have fun, good luck, don't die, it's bad for the health.